The one that we have here, which report is this one?
So this would be technically an appendix item. There would be the agenda report in the standard format we're used to seeing, and this would be attached to that.
Got it. So before we get into the report, one of the things to keep in mind, and maybe we could talk either a little bit now or after the report, are timelines. Do we have a deadline when these reports need to be completed and finalized to submit it to council?
Well, it would need to be a week and a half before when it's on the agenda. But with what the council agenda looks like in December is they try to keep December pretty light when they switch to the new mayor and mayor pro tem. So, and they're not meeting the first Thursday in January because it's pretty close to New Year's, I guess. So I don't know what the backlog is for January 18th. That's the target, but I have to see if we can get on the agenda. So it would be early January if it were on that meeting, that council meeting agenda.
So essentially we have, this meeting and the January meeting to, tie this up and hand it to them.
Right.
Okay. All right, so if we go to the table of content of this report. So, the section that we have are the purpose, the background, and then we discuss in length the potential program options. And then, some of this, the proposed residential parking permit eligibility, guest parking permit, contracted enforcement options. So those are very good, categories to, to have in this report. And I'll be honest, I haven't had a chance to really read through it. But if, we have, today and next January, but if there's any sense from any of us that we would like to add a category, do we still have time?
Yeah, if everyone's in agreement, yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the first section.
Can I ask something? There were one or two people weren't here last meeting. Does anybody need a refresher on what happened after the chair and vice chair met with the council, one council liaison in late October?
Was it aside from what was on the meeting filmed?
I mean, I think we covered it at the meeting. Did you watch the last meeting?
I did.
Okay,
yeah.
And you were the only.
Yeah, I read the notes from the last meeting, and I got kind of the idea of what
the
happened.
gist of it. Okay,
yeah.
Good.
So the purpose, and in the email, just to go back to Karen's point, and in the email, Tomas attached the diagram workflow, how we came to some of this, how staff presented to streamline some of this decision, and I think it was a pretty clever way to, to get there. So if you look at the attachment, you will also be there. So in terms of the on the purpose, I guess the first question would be, does anybody that read it has any comment or additions to it? Go ahead, Pat.
Okay. First of all, I thought it was really well written and very well organized. And so kudos to the people or person or people who put it together. You guys did great. I thought it was wonderful, a wonderful synthesis of a lot of our thoughts. And I think bringing in the way the liaison feedback and such as to what they want, what we all think that they want to move forward on, the type of the program. A couple of things that were on my mind as I read through this. Under background, when we talk about 80% of residents who responded either strongly or somewhat agree that there is a parking shortage in central Brisbane, I think it would be nice to see what the breakout between the two was. Yes, 80% is an overwhelming number, and but not all of those felt strongly about it. And I thought it was closer to 40% of respondents were somewhat. I don't remember exactly, and I didn't look it up, but somewhat is kind of on the fence. People who are actually a little bit more closer to the fence. I think it would inform council of where at that time of that survey, where the opinion of the city actually stood. It might help them, inform them as to going forward if that were broken out.
Yeah, we definitely have those figures. It was almost, or I think I did that part. It was almost like deliberately ambiguous on my part to make it seem like there's a ton of support. But
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, we have those exact percentages, and we can break it up as who's doing somewhat, or how many people felt somewhat, and how many people felt strongly.
Okay, somewhat. Sometimes the group that's in somewhat, when there's pain exerted, all of might change their opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that's just, and I think council should be aware of that. The other question I had was, I did not see the hours or days, time of day that this would be in effect. I didn't see that spelled out anywhere. Would it be 24/7, overnight, daytime hours? I think we should. Or were we going to leave that up to council to decide or give some input on that, or? I may have overlooked it.
No, I did
but-
think we had added it, but I'm not sure now.
Yes, I think that, that could potentially be a category to add. We talked about it intensively, but my recollection is that we were not 100% clear where we landed.
Yeah.
Especially with, having, considering the different options, LAS, Brisbane PD, and then if we go with Brisbane PD, where a certain hour range that we looked at and we talked about it, and that would be very helpful to have in this report.
Maybe we should discuss that tonight, since that'd be something we should discuss tonight.
Yes.
I'd like to add something. If more than likely we're going to go with a citizen-driven complaint system, wouldn't it make sense to have it be 24 hours? Rather than saying, well, you can complain during these hours, but not these hours. There's someone always at the phone, and that's not the kind of thing people are likely to call about at a late hour, but it makes sense that it be for 24 hours. I just want to put that out there. If we don't have outside services, then it's community driven, and the time should not be limited.
So, just to, I guess, elaborate a little more on your point, Linda. So I think the residents, it's having the Brisbane PD enforce it, and then the Brisbane resident sort of call it out, if you will. I'm sorry for not getting the right term. So in that sense, I think the resident could make the call to call out any vehicle that doesn't have the permit at any time, right? But in terms of the enforcement on when does it get a ticket, do we have a window?
Well, when Commander Garcia was here, I think he said they would deal with it as time permitted. And there's no guarantees about how soon they can get there depending on what's going on. So we can't offer a window. We don't know either.
I think it's rather restrictive based on, to be 24/7, based on what Commander Garcia was saying, their time frame, he was saying they could only allow a manpower or a staff, a police, to be able to visit a particular complaint once, which means they couldn't record it as there and then come back sometime later. They had to see, check it, that did or did not have a permit. If not, then it would be given a citation immediately. And I guess if this is going to operate 24/7, I see that as rather onerous. For example, if somebody needs to shop on Valley Drive and all the parking spots on Valley Drive are taken, what's wrong with parking around the corner if there's a place available? Then they become liable to get a ticket, and yet they could be a Brisbane resident. I don't need a permit, but so I probably won't get one, okay? But then, so a person in that condition or in that situation would be, they're coming down to do business on, I'm sorry, not Valley Drive, Visitation, sorry, Visitation.
Ask about
Yeah,
that.
wrong street, sorry. Visitation, and there's no parking there. They park in the residential area, walk around to the grocery store or to have dinner or whatever, and come back and find a ticket. I think that's rather
But I guess the way
onerous.
we have it written, option one includes visitation as part of the zone. So there wouldn't be a situation where
Right, but if you,
visitation
that's
is-
visitation itself, but if that were full, and sometimes it is.
Right, but we don't have an option where that's not. So either option one is all of central Brisbane or just targeted streets. There's no scenario where it's a different zone, right, for visitation versus the residents.
Okay, that's a good point. Are we including visitation then? I don't think that's a good business idea, frankly.
I agree.
So yeah, the scope is residential. We left out commercial, and obviously commercial would be visitation. However, they are mixed use in visitation, and we would say is people living in visitation, they will get a permit. But going back to, I also remember having conversations in terms of, this is in relationship to the enforcement time. Like if you have people for dinner, right? And then, so you give them sort of, so you don't call those people out because some of those people, they're not going to have a permit, but they're going to leave after a certain hour. So I think that was part of the conversation that helped structure those timeframes. And I know we did put them somewhere, but we had different ones.
Yeah, we're kind of remembering. Sorry, just to kind of refresh our memories. Staff's recalling that we were leaning towards the later hours of enforcement. If we're talking about what the exact hours would be, just throwing that out there. And then that was from Commander Garcia. Karen's talking with him, so that's.
Originally, we had planned to do it overnight and give up, was it Friday through Sunday? Something like that, because those are the times people are most moseying around at night. I thought that was a really good period of time to not do that. And then we changed it because of the LAS cost, which, that it doesn't really do us any good to do it during the day, in my opinion. And at this point, I don't really think we need to nail down the times. It's really only a portion of town that's going out first, if I understand correctly. It's the selected streets. And
This is written as two options. One is all of central Brisbane, or option two is targeted streets. And it's up to council to decide which it would be.
so we might be putting the cart before the horse to try to determine the times until we know what they want to do. And maybe just put a note in there, times to be studied upon council recommendation or something like that.
Well, we
Or
spoke to,
else we could sit here and go back and forth for a
Dur-
long time.
during our liaison meeting, we spoke with Colleen and got a lot of detail and Councilmember Mackin and got a lot of clarification. And a lot of that was that, so we're definitely going to do Brisbane police enforcement. And then, but she wanted us to present both the options, present it as a choice for them. So not to necessarily decide we're rolling out trial and present that to them, or present them with rolling out central. We're going to present them with both options. And then similarly, I mean, that's an option to do with enforcement as well. I mean, I think we were leaning towards nighttime enforcement, but again, we have the option to present, leave the choice to them.
I think it is also important to know when we were talking about, if I recall, when we were talking about the central Brisbane part, way back when, visitation was the exception, I think, if I recall.
Yeah. You're right.
So that might be, I'm not sure if we put that in the report that visitation is accepted for that option, because I think we are presenting both options.
Yeah.
But I like I think if it's going for the police department enforcement, I think it might have to be 24-hour potential because it's complaint driven. And as the officer, captain said, it's kind of like if they're called, they got to go out there and they're not going to go out there again. You know, if there's no permit, they're just going to give them a ticket and then they can fight it. I think was kind of the.
That's the impression I got, yeah.
But with Laz, obviously there's more leeway, right? I think that's kind of.
But I mean, this is written, Laz is not even in
Yeah.
here, and it explains why, right? The
Yeah,
liaison,
the
so
cost.
city it's too expensive for the city's budget, so that's fine. It's going to be BPD enforced, which is, I think, a good plan.
And I think another reason why the evening was chosen was because one of Colleen's main points of emphasis was this it should be as soft as possible, frankly. And then I think, so 24 hours would be the opposite of that. And I think that's why we're kind of leaning towards away from that.
I'm wondering if maybe that could be part of it too, is that if it's the police department enforcement, maybe we just make sure that the police department will only enforce this between 10 p.m. or whatever. I think we've said 10 p.m. in the past. So like 10 p.m. till 6 in the morning. If they get calls between those times, they'll go and enforce it.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're thinking.
Oh, okay.
That really
So-
doesn't seem to solve the problem because my guess is that people generally check cars that are not familiar to them during the daytime. And 6 to whatever time is evening. So if that's the only time you can call in, it really puts a big crunch on the community. And there needs to be a good reason why we set those times. And if the police department can make it out there, that's great, but there's no promises. So, I really think giving it a wider space to operate so it is a soft rollout. We're not giving them all these guidelines for when they can call and when they can't call. It's just, we'll get there, in priority order.
I think it's important to consider again the net that we're trying to cast. We're trying to catch people who are using Brisbane streets for airport parking. Mm-hmm. And we are trying to reduce the number of excess cars parked on the street, car storage on the street. Mm-hmm. Those cars stay there for several days. Mm-hmm. Whereas a person who comes to visit or comes to dinner is there for a few hours, I don't think it's the intent to sweep those people into it. And it's not the intent to clean out the streets, so it just won't work to clean out the streets that there's tons and tons of parking available. We're trying to target what we think are the two very set sources of problems of parking that we can potentially eliminate: the airport parking and car storage. And those are cars. Those are cars that are there for many, many days.
I
Right.
didn't realize that they were going to be ticketed immediately when somebody called just because they're on the street. I thought we were still going by the municipal code, which you put the red sticker and then in 72 hours, if you haven't moved,
No,
No,
Commander
okay.
Garcia was very clear the last meeting he was here that they
Okay.
don't have the staffing to be able to come to the car, tag it, and then come back again
Okay. I
on,
must have
on
missed
a
that somehow.
system that's probably going to generate many, many complaints.
So the other things that I want to remind the team as we are, discussing this report, remember that, so we narrowed down the options that we are, putting the different scenarios that they could encounter in those options, right? But also this needs to be some sort of like a menu report that they will have. So what I'm getting at in terms of the timeframes, we could say the committee discussed that it would be beneficial to have 24 hours for these reasons, but also the committee considered that it would be beneficial to have the hours after in the evening, considering that people could have guests for dinners or there's business activities going on in visitation for lunch that they're going to spill into the resident parking, and so we could have both in that report. Is that how you also see it, Tomas, in terms of the report?
Yeah, I think the simplest way is to just leave it open-ended and provide both those options. And then, I mean, we have one more meeting in January, so we can see how it reads then.
One way that might work that is not too onerous in terms of 24 hours, but still makes it easier for residents to be awake and, excuse me, outdoors and report a car, is make it for the morning time, like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. before visitation businesses open. 7 a.m. to 9, that's almost like the street cleaning program, right? It's only a limited number of hours that parking's not allowed without a permit. And then it would capture those two main groups of airport parking and car storage, right?
Only if the PD can respond in that 2-hour window that day. And if they can't get there that day, then it would be the next day someone has to call back again and say, hey, this car's still here again. And then if they're available that day for that 2-hour window, but if there's something else going on, that might be, limited. But I think something worth,
That's probably the best we can do,
Yeah.
Darius, is
Yeah.
just take
Yeah.
it day by day. I am wondering now, very seriously, if we're putting the cart before the horse again, and maybe we should just submit this as it is without timelines and see what comes back.
I guess
If
the
the
one
council
piece,
even wants us
Kinda
to do
hoping it
that, or
doesn't
if they're
come
going to
back.
decide that. We're spending a lot of time looking at something that we have no idea what they're going to want. So,
I think the one thing I would guess, based on my understanding of the feedback, the one thing that's unclear to me yet based on the structuring this way is sort of what the cost was, sort of the add-on menu, right? So it's like, Central Brisbane versus this. I see some of the cost here, but I guess I thought maybe, Councilmember Mackin had asked sort of for more of a, what that might look like, or, sort of a, I know it's throughout this report, but I'm not sure if there'd be an easier way to sort of see what that expanded cost of the added enforcement or the added, to sort of really see where it breaks out, kind of like the flow chart, but with cost associated, But I don't know, that's just my take.
Well, I think the liaisons were under the impression that BPD is here, and if they're not busy, there's no additional cost for enforcement, right?
A bolded section that says if additional staff member is needed, this would be the cost. Here's hardware costs, other costs down below. So I think there are potential additional costs that could be added on, if depending on the sort of desire of the council's rollout.
well, and it can also be a program that grows. It would start here with what we can do financially, and then maybe if things open up and the program's working, they'll want to go on with Laz or an additional person just to work on this parking.
I guess one more thing I did want to point out is that I think when we, in that liaison meeting, when we discussed these targeted streets, it sort of was very clear that these were kind of maybe randomly selected or sort of just thrown out there. I'm not sure these are sort of the streets. So just want to point that again that, I think the map is here, and I think that there was some conversation in that meeting about potential other streets. I'm not sure that's something that we might want to throw back out to the council and let them think about it, but just putting that out there again, I think the map is helpful to see that.
Proposed
Yeah, but these were just, I think, thrown out during one of the meetings, proposed streets, but I'm not sure if there's,
Yeah.
I also don't want to see like, oh yeah, this is what we're thinking, or should be the streets that, I think there should be some flexibility for them to decide that piece, or someone else to
The word
decide.
proposed would probably fix that whole situation so that it is being given as a suggestion, again, to the council.
That is what question that I had is where did the specific list of these specific streets come from?
I think the liaison.
No, it came from
So,
that council
I mean-
meeting, April.
Are these streets that city council
that
lives
was-
on? I mean, one of them is. I'm
Councilmember
just kind of
Cunningham,
curious.
think,
I know
outlined
that's
the
all.
ones that
Yeah, they
Not sure
got
how-
some,
that were important.
They
Was it
got
just sort of throwing out
feedback.
suggestions during that meeting, or was this like a very thoughtful process in that meeting?
no, it was at the end, and it was, well, I don't think the problem is everywhere. Maybe we should just really focus on boom, 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 boom. We did hear from someone that lived on Alvarado that said that people park next to the school, that they have the Uber situation there going to the airport. But I think those are good comments. We tried to put in the context that since individuals aren't, maybe that could be clarified a little bit more, but individuals don't want to lead the effort to say, I've got a petition, who wants this program, that they know that some people don't want, is that the council is saying they'll initiate it with this mailed out vote. And I think what was talked about at the liaison meeting was that, let's say you get a little group of people that all of them want a program. Well, let's do at least 3 blocks. That would be the minimum of an area that could be a permit area. So we tried to put that in this document. I don't
Yeah,
know if
we do
maybe
say-
it could be more clear.
Yeah, we do say or on other streets, but I agree. I see what you're saying. There's no need to give these streets that were thrown out if.
Well, I think we still want to include those, but we want to make it very clear that it could be something different, because that was what they brought up.
There was a discussion, I think, that it doesn't have to be all of Alvarado. It could be, say, one sector of Alvarado, as long as it's sort of some 3-block section or something.
Yeah, the council is going to say either we want to do this program on these 5 streets, make it so, or they're going to say we want to send out this ballot and see what people say, because maybe they don't want to stick their necks out and implement a program.
So, in the sense to, help Tomas capture some of this discussion, maybe I think what I'm hearing is, there in terms of the timeframes, we should add a section there and have, 2 different timeframes, either 24 hours or the evening. Also, in terms of the cost section, maybe that needs to be a little more robust to show the different breakdown. And the other thing that I'm hearing in terms of picking different street, we also remember about the ordinance that would give the residents to organize on that street and do a petition. So I think having that, and Brisbane does have that ordinance, having a section to talk a little bit about that would probably be good. What do you staff thinks about that?
That ordinance
here.
has been
Oh,
on the
it's in
books
there?
for a long time.
That's the BMC code 1026. It's in the document.
But is it
Option 2.
explained? Could it be better explained? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess so.
Can we go
Yeah.
back to the streets, the targeted streets?
Sure.
And my recollection is that it was just kind of off the cuff that Councilmember Cunningham mentioned these streets. These are streets that she's aware of. And so it kind of feels like we're nailing down the targeted streets based on what could possibly have been just something off the top of her head. And I want to present this as suggested targeted streets and maybe say or others as preferred by council, or you guys know the wording. But it just seems kind of like, where did you come up with these streets? She may not even remember saying it at this point.
But yeah, that could be clarified. That's a good point. I think, that meeting was late at night, and then remember I don't know if any of you remember, I was asked, do you need us to summarize what was discussed? And I said, oh, we can watch the video. But we watched the video and staff took something different from it than the direction that council thought it went. And so what we kind of finally understood was that they had a lot of discussion about a lot of issues, and then they kind of did coalesce around an idea of displayed permits, and when, sure, it was Councilmember Cunningham that said these 5 streets, but there was like kind of nodding, like there was no vote by everybody, but there was kind of like, yeah, let's look at that, go and look at that. So it's in a gray area, but there kind of was agreement to,
There kind of was, but it's suggested
yeah,
still.
Yeah, I don't
and
disagree
I
with
don't
that,
want to like tell them that this is our idea and then be asked why we chose these streets. It's just, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I don't think that's how we want to present ourselves as a committee, but rather as doing the service. These were the suggested streets and they can change somehow, massaging the wording so that it's a little softer.
maybe it can just be in that background that when council provided feedback, be a little more specific about what their feedback was. Also.
Okay, however you decide to do it, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. So we are in agreement just to, now that we're in this section, just to keep those, those points that we discussed with cons in terms of targeted street in Brisbane, and the enforcement is going to be Brisbane PD. So we should not have any mention of a third contract.
Well, they asked for it in discussion as a possible thing to consider in the future. So that's why it's in there.
Don't they also want options? Wasn't that a directive to give them options so the council is not being led, but rather given something to decide on?
Yeah, did you think that we were doing that too much? I mean, we kind of, at the liaison meeting, did pretty much narrow down the option, we ended up with 6 options and we narrowed it down to these 2.
Yeah, and then if Brisbane PD, is going, considering Brisbane PD, there's another third party that is going to do the database, right?
Yes, but that's not enforcement.
There also is a large section on additional enforcement in the back end of the document that talks about LAS and other options further, but that it says was not because of cost, probably not moving forward. Right? Is that what you're referring to, I guess? Or?
Yeah, well, just, mentioning, the different enforcement options, but also if you do the PD, have a little bit more meat on the bone, sort of like they will still need a database. And I think that, I forgot the name of that company.
It's there under potential program options under B for both of the 2 options.
Got it. Yeah, like I said, haven't had a chance to read this, so I apologize.
In terms of the Brisbane operated program, after the $5,000 setup fee, Brisbane staff then manages the permitting process, or is it still an outside company as we had discussed before?
Right, it would be Brisbane staff, and whether or not there's enough staff is kind of cross that bridge when we get there.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I think TBD, if there are requirements and the company that provides that service said, if you want, and the people meet the requirements, they have a driver's license, a car registered, proof that they live at that, whatever it is, and they meet all those, do you want us to automatically issue the permit, or are you guys going to look at each and every one? That's to be determined.
So do they must charge a fee though per permit then, right?
Yeah, but that'll be paid by the applicant.
Okay. Okay. How much is that, and how much are we thinking?
We've talked about this ad
I
nauseum,
know.
$10 to $20 per permit.
Okay, but I think that should be in here.
It
right?
is. It's under proposed cost.
And a proposed permit cost.
It is. Under annual costs is range from $15 to $20.
No. The cost. Oh, okay. All right.
All right. So should we jump into our favorite one, guest parking permit section? You want to go first, Darius?
No comment here. Yeah.
Pat,
I think it was fine.
Gregory?
Yeah, I honestly, when I read it, I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's.
Linda?
It looks all right for now.
I think this, this section, we talked a lot about it, and because in maybe 50% of the city that we discussed, what they ended up doing that we thought it was practical was having 2 guest permit similar to like a regular permit that they could, be used in different occasions. We mentioned kids coming back from college, sometimes caregiver. There were a lot of other, situations where these 2 guest permit would have fulfilled those needs instead of having all these different, categories and having to apply, so I need one for a caregiver. Oh, my kid got back. I need, so we just have someone sort of like a 2 guest permit. So I'm not sure if you guys remember that conversation.
From the liaison meeting, I remember like an emphatic 1 guest or 1 permit, 1 guest permit was one. So 1 parking permit, 1 guest permit is what I recall from the liaison meeting.
But I guess the way it's written currently, you can use that 21 day however you want, right? You can give it to your nephew, whoever you want. Each household gets 1 permit, and then you can also apply for additional ones. Is that correct?
And let me add that I think when that concept was talked about and we had the maximum of 2 permits per household, we were going to have 2 guest permits that anybody could use. But then at the liaison meeting, we heard the idea that Councilmember Mackin wanted us to put in this proposal was every adult in the household can get a permit. So there's no maximum limit if you have a household of 12 adults with 12 cars. I'm just throwing a number out. So then we need less of guest permits because if that college student comes home, they can apply and get a permit.
So how does that work for, say, a teenager for whom the car is registered in the parent's name?
Yeah, that question came up because a staff member had that situation. And they either need to change the car to their name or they can submit supplemental information.
I think that was one of those cases where the BD, or that could be kind of reviewed on a per basis, and if it's obvious that it's sort of a parent and kid, that would be just a
Okay.
sort of thing. Yeah. I guess I'm a little confused as I was rereading this piece. So is it that every household gets 1 guest permit, but then additional guest permits can be applied for, or those have to be applied for online to get those 21? I guess it's like, is it the first sentence is 1 sentence and then additional guest permits can be applied for? Or is it that in order to get the 21 sort of permit days, you apply for each day as you need it?
Right. You apply for it.
As you need it, okay. And I guess since it's online in real time, do you need to print it and display it? Or if it's already registered, you don't need to print it because the BD would know that it's in the register in the system?
No,
I don't have a printer.
Because they're not using license plate readers, so they're going to need to see a visual.
Okay, but if they go to put your plate in, wouldn't they just see that you're already in the system anyways?
I think it takes longer.
Okay.
for them
I don't
to
have a
look
printer
it
for
up.
one side. I would, I'm not sure what I would do in that case.
I'll print it for you.
But this would be, not a printout. This is going to be a,
No, it is.
Yes, it's a printout.
It
for
is a
guest
printout,
permit.
yeah. The guest
well,
permit.
I guess, just to talk about the reason why we have a sticker, or in this case, a printout, is because the residents could call it in, and one of their cues is going to be, oh, this car doesn't have a printout, or it doesn't have, the sticker. But in terms of the printout, that could easily be, what's the one I'm looking for? The people could counterfeit, But going back to this guest parking permit, maybe we need to talk about how many permits is a household getting, because they're sort of tied up now, you know? Because you're saying, I remember what you said, Karen, and you're 100% correct. That's what Council Colleen said, that anybody that lives here has a car could apply for a permit.
As an aside,
So we don't have a limit?
what I have learned is from my personal relationships with some people, is that the goal is everyone that lives here should be able to park here. So
Park one vehicle.
one vehicle, yeah. But to make the parking for Brisbane, and if there's a lot more people in the household than other households, then they need to be considered and treated equally. So that might be a parameter to keep in mind as we're looking at all of these things, the guest parking, whatever, and the how many permits per household. It's like, we're not going to be able to determine that. That's really up to the council. And I think it probably will be discussed at some point. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's got a facial movement.
I think this is another opportunity to add a section, how many permits are we going to have per household? I mean, we talked about this a lot, and there was a lot of research that we did too. At one point we ended up on 2, but I remember that conversation that at that meeting, that Colleen said anybody could have.
Hey, Chris, so on proposed residential parking permits eligibility, it says any resident of a household with an address on the streets included in the program with a driver's license and a vehicle registered to them at that address would be eligible to apply for and receive a parking permit. So
That's
IE1 parking permit. Yeah, the last one. IE1 parking permit for each car with a unique driver.
Oh, I see it. I'm sorry, it was a little misleading, because when I read these sections in the other cities, it was more like, you need a car registration under your name, you need a light bill, something. But there were other section more specific that said the amount or how many permit we're going to give a household, and had a little bit of a reason in there.
But we didn't settle on a number. There is no number. If you meet these qualifications, you're eligible for a permit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a unique model, but it came up at the liaison meeting and we were asked to bring it forward. So if you have 3 adults with a driver's license in your household, you can apply for 3 permits. If you have 7, you should be able to apply for 7.
I think Commander Garcia recommended that as well when he was here. Just give everybody who's here with a car a permit to start. It's not, and I agree, it's not a car reduction program per se, in that we're trying to shrink the number of cars that Brisbane residents have, other than surplus car parking on the street, car storage on the street.
Got it. Okay. So I think it's clear to me now. And the cost is the same as the guest permit, right? It's going to be about $15 to $20.
I don't know if we know if there is any cost for a guest permit at all.
I don't recall discussing that unless it was last meeting and I didn't
So-
catch it.
Oh yeah. So there's no cost for. Why not?
Well, they're not having to mail anything. It's not, they're not collecting money. You can only get a guest permit if you already have a regular permit at your address. So maybe this contractor feels like they've
But
collected
we
the
have to pay
fees.
the contractor to generate it, right? Or check it or whatever.
And they did not tell us there's a cost from them.
Okay.
So this 20 days per year, how does that work? So if the person gets a guest permit now, they only have 21. These are consecutive years. I mean consecutive days. and then it expires and they're not eligible to get another guest permit?
That's right, up to them. So if they were on a 3-week vacation in Brisbane, then yeah, that they, or if they stay for a week, leave, they've used 7 days, come back, use 7 more, come back later in the year and use 7 more, hit 21, or in any combination.
Sorry, but the guests don't apply for the permit. It's the resident who applies. So it's more like the resident can give the 21 days however they feel.
Right. That's true. It's not the
So
guest's
you would get
choice.
21 days and you can use them all 21 in a row if you want. You can use one today, one a month, one next month, whatever. But you have to apply every time you want it, right? Or go online and say you want the guest permit for this period to be active.
Oh,
And print
got
that
it.
out, put that on your friend's car or, whoever.
Got it. So I got 21 days, and then I get a guest permit, and I said this guest permit is going to be for 1 day, and then a month
Of the
later,
21 days. Yeah, so one out of the 21 days would be that day. And then another week you give somebody else separately, but you only get 3 weeks total. Yeah.
So let's say within 6 months, I use 1 per month, then I'm short 6 days from the 21.
I don't follow. No. What?
So you're basically have control of the 21 days. They're not consecutive when you get the guest permit.
Right, it's up to your guest. It's up to what you and your guests figure out together and however they
got it.
decide to use them.
Got it. Okay.
But you're not getting you're applying for a guest permit and you have a bank of 21 days and you can allocate those 21 days however you want. But there's no permit that you're getting.
Tomas,
Yeah.
can you scroll back up for just a moment so I can see the format again of how this is? No, back down to the same page, I'm sorry. Just a little, where we were talking about. Okay, so I wish I'd brought my computer so I could see how it's laid out, because I'm seeing all of these, I think I'm seeing all of these potential options all kind of smashed together. And if you can just indulge me and show me where it's like options, and this is one option and this is another option, so that it's really clear. Because I'm not seeing it that way. I'm seeing guest parking, contracted. I don't see a division between what we're offering them, unless you can show me. And if you can, that would be wonderful.
Potential program options, that section,
Oh yeah, there we go.
that was on the previous page we were just on.
Okay, potential. Okay, and how are they separated?
Either through, it's going to be Brisbane Police Enforcement in both situations, and either quote unquote trial select streets or all of Central Brisbane. The distinction is the area.
Okay. And then what's next? I apologize. I just got a little lost here.
And then from there, we just went to eligibility, 1 driver's license, 1 vehicle, 1 address, you get a vehicle, and then I think we're on guest permits.
I see, then contracted enforcement options. Okay, I'm good. Thank you. I just got mixed up there
No problem.
about what the options were and how they were staggered.
Yeah, but I think maybe a contracted enforcement option should probably be under potential program options.
Yeah, I mean, up to you guys. I think our reasoning was we just threw them in the end because they're quote unquote not real options. So it's like, here's the information, but you're considering only 2 really. But I mean, yeah, your guys' call.
Maybe they should be treated equally so that
Colleen was quite adamant that the last enforcement options were not feasible. So treating them equally would be against.
and that part, but if they're presented equally to the council, then the council will decide, and obviously there's not too many choices based on our situation.
Yeah, I agree. Like if you're reading a category and then you jump from one category to another, but then there's something of that category down the report, sometimes it's not taken in consideration. So I guess in the grouping, if you could group same themes or concept together, like in this case, that's another contractor option. That, in my opinion, I don't know how you guys feel.
So Say that again. The
So-
enforcement using,
So we have the,
Allows.
the potential program options. So the contractor, it is still a program option. It should, and what we're saying is maybe we should be, it
the
should be
enforcement
under,
contractor?
it should be under program options because it is still an option.
The enforcement contractor?
The
Laz.
the
Yes.
contractor
No,
enforcement option.
they're, I mean, technically they are, but really they're not. That was the whole point of having the meeting with the liaisons is we had 6 options and we were never going to get through a council meeting with those. So we're like, we got to narrow this down. Tell us the direction that you're thinking. And it's only the liaisons and only one of them came, but she had the proxy of the other one. And she said, put that information at the end as something that we could add later. We're not doing it.
No, no, I agree with you. All I'm saying is it should probably go under, it should have its own
Directly
title,
under?
but right underneath potential program options.
Oh, okay, yeah, we
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
we can move it up there.
So because it's the same,
Instead of,
conversation. but it's
instead
just-
of way down at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure,
Yeah,
I misunderstood.
yeah. Okay, what else we got here? Contractor enforcement option, guest parking permit.
I still think we need to say something about hours, even if it's giving options on hours. No out 24/7 or set hours.
Yes,
I
he's
know
gonna
that
add,
should
he's
say
gonna add that
something.
section.
Yeah,
And maybe say all of it. Here are the pros and cons of 24/7. Here's the pros and cons of a
Yes.
more limited time frame.
Yes. So I think some of the, discussion that we've been having is definitely out of section in terms of times. And do a little bit of more robust information on the cost section.
What exactly is missing from the cost section, like specifically?
I think Darius had a good point. Forgot right now what he was saying.
I mean, I think the flow chart's not a bad idea because it's got all the costs in it, so maybe that goes back in there and we flesh it out a little bit.
You can add the flow chart to there. Are the flow chart going to be together with this when it's presented to council, or is it separate?
I will refer to the technical expert.
I mean, yeah, it can be. Yeah, we can include it.
I think it's a good idea.
Because when I read the flow chart, I was like, oh, I get it. And then when I read this, it kind of fit together.
I mean, so yeah, you could have some sort of reference flow chart and as an appendix to this report. And I know you're also going to be providing like a lot of the raw data, right? Because Colleen was saying that would be very helpful. And that would be the one that we worked on with the different cities and
Yeah, like the one I said in the attachments and saying where I said this will be included in the report unless we don't want it. The one where I sent last week.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of moving parts in this report. It's pretty robust, that's for sure. So it's 726. I think we cover a lot of the sections that we have in the report. Speaking for myself, having had the time to really read through it in a detailed manner. But I think that discussion that we have, it gave Tomas a good chunk of things to incorporate and maybe clarify or restructure. So if we don't have any other more questions about it, maybe we should go to the next agenda point.
If you haven't had a chance to read through it, don't you want to go through it now before we move on?
It was always my perception that this report is going to be, it was going to take its time. We did a lot of research as a whole group. And in the writing process, you almost want to, read it on your own time and detail, and then maybe email Tomas and then have that discussion. That would be my approach.
You want to have a discussion in January about the rest of this? I'm not understanding.
Yes, and then we are going to have another discussion about it in January.
Is this all of the information that we have that we've looked at so far?
So when I started the meeting, I talked about the different reports. So I guess this brings me to the other question. You are preparing another one that is more structured, as a city does it, right? Is that something that you're going to share with us too?
Yeah, not trying to. I'm just thinking about the timeline and the holidays. I haven't done it yet, so I can. It'll be pretty brief. It's got the background, discussion, recommendation, fiscal impact, and so it's gonna really be a summary of what's in here.
Are there more pages to look at on this report that's on our screen?
No, but I've got 8 comments, so I think going through it again now is not that productive because we've got a number of changes that you guys have suggested that we make at this point.
Okay, for some reason I thought December was going to be when we completed discussing this, and then in January, look at the final draft so that it's ready to go.
Yeah,
Didn't anticipate more changes in January.
I mean, we don't either, ideally. I mean, hopefully we got them all. Just hopefully we got them all now. But
Okay, so if we're really done, then we're done. We can move on. I just wasn't sure.
I guess, is there a way that if Tomas and staff sends out a copy of this, we can be held accountable to have time to review it and, give feedback or something? So we're not doing this sort of.
That's a great point, and I think we mentioned the areas the different sections to add and the ones to either add a little more information or change the structure. So if you do those things that we discussed, Tomas, and you send it to us, and then you tell us, okay, you have a week, provide me your feedback, and then we do that. And then when we discuss it on January, you have all you incorporated our discussion today, and then everybody will have their more defined additional input to finalize it on January. So
yeah, I did send this one. I sent this one specifically a week in advance on Wednesday before this meeting, but the rest of the attachments I did send on Friday. But this one was a week. Do you want more than a week?
I mean, and to be honest, we're after Thanksgiving, things go sort of like in a holiday mode schedule, so to speak. So we just have to be thoughtful about that too.
All right, I'll shoot for a week again. Or if more, let me know.
At least a week, but if you could do a little better, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay. So if we are all in agreement, we move on to the next agenda item.
I think it should read 2024 work plan, right?
So the new business is 2023 work plan, but we know this is what we talked about in 2023, but now it's going to be 2024. Can you enlarge that? So just a little background here. What we were asked is review the points, rank them, which ones you want to prioritize. And once you feel good about it, then we'll have a meeting with the council liaison. And that meeting form, I think they will either come to our meeting or the chair, vice chair, and myself, we meet with them. One of those two options will happen. So let's go point by point. Number one, back then we said review parking issues in central Brisbane and develop recommendation. Is that the permit parking?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. So maybe that let's knock down out of the park. All right. Number two, investigation of potential for one-way street, Mariposa, Monterey, between Visitation and Solano. And this is where this was referred by Director of Public Works. So, two things here. I guess we will keep it. Do we want to come later and rank it, or do we rank it now, or what is Public Works, since they are the ones recommending it, position on this point?
Why don't we go through the whole list?
You want to go through the whole list?
Say again?
So I was saying, do we discuss this number two, or we go through the whole list and then we rank them? So Linda's suggesting we go through the whole list, so let's go through the whole list.
Yeah,
So
I think
the
so.
next point would be emergency vehicle access on all city streets for fire safety, also referred by Public Works. Next point, study pedestrian path on west side of Bayshore Boulevard from San Bruno Avenue to Old County Road. Number 5. Okay, so items our committee requested but were not prioritized by the council, whatever that means. Speeding on a street in Northeast Ridge. Review SB 43 regarding local speed limits. Improving bike lanes and initiative encouraging bicycling. Transportation plan for Sierra Point, including shuttle bus service, parking considerations, other forms of transportation. Number 9, receive and comment on Bay Line's transportation circulation plans or other proposal referred by Public Works. Speeding along San Bruno Avenue between San Francisco Avenue and Tomas Avenue. So I think two things here, and obviously, Shimin. Some of these points, it's not that they seem outdated, but I think there's other stuff that we could probably bring into the next year work plan. And in terms of, the ones that I couldn't speak, but the ones that are referred by Public Works, I'll leave that for staff to make their case if we keep them, and if you want to prioritize those.
Just a note, emergency vehicle access on all city streets. I think we went over that a couple of years ago when we were looking at the streets where there was no turnaround, and we actually, the Director of Public Works went and talked to some of the people who could have granted us access but weren't ready at that time. And so we kind of said, we'll keep working on it, but we didn't do much more. I'm speaking particularly of Tulare Street. That situation may have changed at this point, and we may want to take a look at that, because that is very important. As is item number 2. I think item number 2 might even be more important because we're managing with the emergency vehicles right now, but item 2 is a dangerous situation right now.
You mean item 3, right?
No, item 3 is the access for emergency vehicles. But item 2, and I think we investigated this.
We started it and then got
traffic,
pulled into
and then we
parking.
didn't finish it. But if the director actually is considering one-way streets, which is something I think we considered, that might be a really good one to take care of for pedestrian safety and vehicle safety. This is where lives can be involved in immediate danger. And we've done
Okay.
some things up there, but I don't think the work is complete. I would move that one up to the top, I think, if I were recommending.
So you're saying item 2 and item 3 are somewhat related?
No, they're not related, but I think item 2 is potentially one of the more important items. That's just my input. As I see item 2 as one of the top items.
Karen, wasn't item 2 the issue of the fire trucks being able to make the turn or something? Wasn't that the basis for making them one-way streets?
That was part of how it started. I think it's, 2 vehicles can't pass on that street right now. You've kind of got to pull over in someone's
Okay.
driveway when someone's coming the other way. And a one-way street allows more space for everything to fit on the street, pedestrians, parking, all of the needs that are
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Makes it safer.
Also, in addition
Yeah.
to the fire issue. In addition to the challenge at the top, when you drive up Mariposa and get to Solano, and people are uncomfortable coming to a full stop,
Yeah.
myself included, and creates conflict up there.
Okay.
Okay, so we are definitely keeping number 2 and number 3.
And number 4.
Yes.
And number 4 is number 4. I think that one wasn't like a section part of the those walkways, and it got improved for access to the bus stop. Or no?
Well, that's on the east side of Bayshore. This would be on the west side, across the street from where the new sidewalk was constructed.
Okay. Okay.
There are children that walk from the mobile home park
Yes,
up along the side of that highway, and it's seriously dangerous.
it is. I've seen families with strollers and such. It's, yeah.
The one of them, I think I like where that number 4 is. For in terms of the level, the study pedestrian path. That's good right there. One I think I would like to bump up is the speeding on San Bruno Avenue,
Okay.
because I really think that it's a fatality waiting to happen over there on that street if we don't do something to try to slow down that street.
There have been now 3
And
incidents.
there's lots of near misses.
Yeah.
Where would you move it? Move number 10 up, right?
Yeah, I would probably move it to like either 5 or 6, probably. Like
Even
if we're
higher.
in the hierarchy.
Even higher. That's
Yeah.
a real immediate danger that people are talking about a lot. And we don't.
Yeah, maybe even 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that this list, the first 4 were referred to the committee, so I want to leave those there, but item CS, complete streets, is requesting. It could be the first one there. I mean, it may end up that something on the top is not a priority anymore, but for the sake of this being the draft that's reviewed by the liaisons.
Yes. I think number 4 came from the committee. That was not referred to us.
But it was approved in a plan a couple years
I'm
ago.
sorry?
It was approved in a plan a couple years
Yes,
ago.
that's right. Yes, that's right.
I absolutely agree that item 10 is a top priority.
Yes.
It's just going to happen if we don't do something. I've actually had conversations with Brandon Alstrom about doing a grassroots community thing in the interim until we kind of see what we can do. And it's not getting off the ground very fast, but we are talking about it.
I didn't hear feedback from there was a kind of a community meeting about it, Yeah, we know.
Would
I
it,
don't
would
think
it be
staff are back.
appropriate to ask BPD to put a patrol car out there?
The BPD has been quite active.
Okay, on San Bruno?
As far as
Okay.
I can tell from hearing the sirens there and in other parts of town,
Right.
they're really
I've seen them out quite a bit lately.
doing a lot
Yes,
of really good stuff,
yes.
catching people that are going through stops, and that's one of the big problems at Mendocino and San Bruno.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a lot of anxiety out there about San Bruno Avenue because people are, I don't know, either not paying attention or they've just gone through that area so many times they forget there's a stop sign. I can't even imagine what is causing the problem. And I don't want to name it because I don't know. But I know that recently there have been 3 incidents of people almost being hit, just narrowly escaping being hit. And it's pretty close together. So I don't know if I don't know what causes it. There's probably some psychological thing behind it too. But we do need to protect that area. And I think that's
Okay.
probably one of the more important things. There's a lot of kids
Yeah.
in that area.
Yeah.
So maybe we bump it up to number 1?
I would think so,
Yeah, let's do that.
Greg.
I mean, I don't have a Facebook account, but my wife does, and there's a lot of action on that street. You know, a lot of people are talking about like you're saying, yeah. Okay. So I mean, the other thing that okay, so the other question is, should we remove some of these and maybe talk about new topics, or can we maybe explore a little bit of new topics if anybody has some new ideas?
I think it would be a good idea to possibly give them this because they can reference it as what our old plan was, and then renumber it in the order that we've just talked about, and then do another sheet of some of the ideas we're coming up with. So it's not, and let them tell us what they want.
Well, if we don't talk about the new ones, we will know what they are. So we don't know where will they be ranked.
Oh, I'm not saying don't talk about them. I'm saying we don't need to rank them unless we put them on another sheet because they're coming from the committee and our work is assigned by the council.
I guess as for clarification, this was a 2023 work plan. So we need to adhere, or we have flexibility to, either if we feel some of these points are not necessarily important or are more and re-rank them. I mean, are we just limited by this work plan, or can we add new points of interest for the work plan of 2024?
On this work plan, everything from number 4 on down came from the committee. So I think we can add or subtract whatever we would want, especially items that were not number 5 on down, items that were not prioritized by council. I think we can do what we want under that section.
I agree.
I'll answer
And
if you let me.
Only thing I'm referring to is the presentation to council. This is what we had. This is what we believe the priorities are, and this is additional input.
Okay.
So that it makes sense and they can look at all of it and give us directive.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say. There were 4. The first 4 items were approved when we took a work plan to council, probably the beginning of 2022. I don't recall, maybe even longer. And the rest were items that we talked about, but they weren't prioritized at the time. So we're going to review everything with the liaisons. So we have the 4. The liaisons may say, we don't think those are as important anymore. Below number 4 are all of the ones that you guys want to consider to add or subtract, and it'll be a discussion. It's kind of a blank slate but this is where we're starting from to figure out what the work plan will be.
One thing I'm thinking about adding would be potentially looking at the San Bruno Avenue and Visitation and Old County Road and San Francisco Avenue intersection.
There's a new sign up, I think.
There,
Five-way stop or something.
yeah, there might be new signs, but I'm just thinking about looking at, I guess what I'm thinking about is looking at that intersection and looking at ways we can make it safer.
That's a 5 points intersection,
Yeah, it's a
right?
5-point
Yeah.
intersection.
idea.
There's just a lot of confusion there a lot of times.
There is.
And, you know, multiple times avoiding
that's a
getting hit
major
by
point of
cars not
entry.
stopping there is also another thing that comes to my brain, my mind, you know. But just looking at what we can do, is there light situation or roundabout, or is there anything that's even feasible? Just something to look into. Investigate that.
Making
What
it
ways we can make
safer.
it safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those stop signs, I don't know if they have, because when you have a intersection with more than, you know, your typical two street, you have more than two street, there's a sign that sort of alerts you and say, you know what, this is a intersection that has more than two street. And I don't know if that intersection has that signage.
I don't
You know what I'm talking
I
about?
saw one recently that I believe I said five-way stop.
Maybe we need to make it more visible. I haven't, you know, it's not obvious to me. I haven't seen it. And I use that
I
intersection a
haven't seen
lot.
that sign.
Might be a new sign. I'm not sure because I never noticed it before, but I know we can put it on the list certainly and see.
Yeah. Any other item?
Something that I have, and I don't know if this is something we as a committee address or something staff addresses. But I've noticed that over the years, when there is road construction, especially out on Bay Shore, but also here on Visitation, the safety markings for lane closures and such, I believe have become inadequate to advise oncoming drivers. Just this past week, I came across two situations. One was the off-ramp from northbound 101 onto Bay Shore. And you come up and you have the bike path and then there's the other lane. Well, immediately past where the bike path ends, the other lane closed off. It looked like up around the corner they were taking debris out of a sewer or something. And so it essentially left almost no merge room for the people in the fast lane to merge into the right lane.
Yeah,
I
experienced
you saw that
too.
also?
Yeah.
And so I look at that and say, okay, this could have been better marked, could have been some flashing lights, there could have been more room allowed because it was a
Warning.
significant distance to the actual work to protect the people doing the work. And then over here on Bay Shore, the same day, the traffic signal at the Van Waters Road intersection was out. And we were coming up northbound on Bay Shore, and there was an orange diamond that said, "Be prepared to stop." Well, that to me means there's a signal or something, but I could see that the signal wasn't working. I could see the construction truck. And then there were two stop signs that had been put up. So I came to a stop. The car behind me almost did not. They slammed on the brake. They were obviously speeding, but they slammed on the brakes, almost went off the road to avoid rear-ending me. And again, I think that's a matter of signage being inadequate. And I'm sure there are standards. I'm sure they're state-derived standards, but I'm just kind of wondering, when we have contracting crews out there, does the city check to make sure that this signage is adequate? And I don't know if that's something that we as a committee need to look at, or it's just something city does, or what?
Yeah, we are inspecting those, but I think that the best thing for someone to do if they see something that feels inadequate is to call Public Works and bring it to the attention.
I called the police department on the traffic light immediately because I think then you saw a patrol car out there later on, I guess, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean-
Randy said that this might come up, is that he went out and he also contacted police and they were kind of excited that there
These
were a bunch
are-
of people to write tickets for because a bunch of people were running the stop.
These are independent contractors doing the work, right? They're not government staff, not city staff or
No, they got a
state staff.
permit to do,
Yeah,
yeah.
City staff usually does a pretty good job of letting you
Yeah.
know what they're doing.
yeah.
These are just like cutting corners, it seems like, on advising you of safety issues.
Right.
And and the one coming off the highway over flyover was very strange. I almost got hit because someone just wanted to move over so fast.
Real quick, yeah.
So I mean, that's a good point. In general, what is the approach when you have this contractor, and sometimes these are private businesses, but sometimes these are like Caltrans or something like that. Is that so the city public works staff or the city PD goes over there and sort of check to make sure they got the proper signage and dimensions, so avoid any incident, or make sure that that they're putting their safety measurements correctly. How does that works?
Yeah, that permittee applies for a permit. When they're applying for a permit to do work, they have to get an encroachment permit. That's reviewed by the city engineer, and then the inspector is making sure that what they have on the plan is what they do in the field. And there are state standards, state and federal, and then state is revised, but pretty close to it, about how you're supposed to move traffic. Oh, if you close a lane, what signs, what distances, depending upon the speed. I don't know in that case if they weren't following it exactly, or, what the specific situation is. People speed on Bayshore. That's a
Yes.
contributing factor, for sure.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So I guess for the most part, is that something that we need to add, or this is just something that is not something that we could add, that pertains to our scope, or just residents should just call it if they see something weird.
Yeah, I think you should really call the Public Works Department and think it'd be challenging to train you guys up on the standards and then, fold you into an operation that's normally handled by staff asking for, extra notification. We do that sometimes. We can do that. So that's, if you see something, definitely let us know.
Got it. So anyone else has another, point that they would like to add to this agenda?
Did you decide where you wanted to put the 5 points intersection review?
I mean, I would probably suggest probably near the speeding on streets in the Northeast Ridge, probably. Maybe right there or below.
Northeast Ridge, I think, has been removed from our work plan. At some point, we got a memo from Public Works saying that that was not approved.
It's been a long time since we've looked at this, so.
Well, I know Pat and I did a bunch of work up
Yeah.
there, and then it was taken off the list.
So they did, we were specifically looking at the pedestrian crossing at the top of the hill, and there has been traffic calming installation done up
Yes.
there. So I think
So
that's
that
why.
one probably won't come back on our list anymore.
We have several items here that address or are the problem of speeding in town. There are three. Now, I think San Bruno Avenue is an issue that is an immediate concern and needs to be addressed as its own right now, or as soon as possible, on a priority. But I think beyond that, maybe we ought to be looking at speeding in general in town, and maybe the rolling through of stop signs, which is prevalent.
That's really
Maybe,
a good
I don't know,
point.
a traffic safety program or something for the residents and people that work here.
Yeah, our safe routes to school was kind of leaning in that direction, but it wasn't big enough to include drivers that are not paying attention or whatever they're doing in their heads.
Right.
So you're suggesting we bundle them and just have more, I mean, some Bruno will be its own, but the other ones related to speed, bundle them and have more targeted things to look at in general?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Or the need for traffic calming. I mean, I'm an advocate strongly of 25 miles 25 miles per hour on a residential street, especially hours, which are so narrow, is just way too much.
I agree.
I know that's the state mandated. State law now allows that to be lowered, and I think it should be in many cases. But, that's,
There's so many streets in Brisbane, particularly on the hills, where two cars cannot pass. One needs to pull over and be polite enough to let the other
Yes.
one go. And it's not even based on the traffic rule of whoever's going
uphill or
downhill
downhill.
backs up.
Yeah.
It's just not being done in practice. So I think maybe limiting traffic speed is in the whole town is a good idea. At some point, it's a big study though. And I know that potentially the council is going to have other things that they're going to prioritize.
Yes.
So we just need to add it in and be waiting.
Yeah. I mean, in that vein, the new signs on Bayshore are great. Those are terrific.
Oh, the one that says thank you.
That say
if
you're going 46, slow down.
It makes me so happy when it thanks me. It's,
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, you're going too fast on Hillside, slow down. And this one says, thank you.
Yes.
It's like, how polite. It makes me want to slow down.
You see the guy in front of you saying thank you, and then when it says to you slow down, you're like, oh no, I want to be thanked.
Yeah.
I have a question,
So-
I guess. Is there a sort of vision for Brisbane for the future in terms of like biking and all this sort of transportation? Like, is there like a, city plan that's like a 10, 20-year kind of plan that's a big picture that we like, I'm not sure something that maybe predated my time in the committee, but, just to get a sense of what the vision is for sort of transportation in general? Or is that sort of too big scope?
And there's a bicycle pedestrian master plan.
Read that?
Bicycle pedestrian master plan.
Could we share that out maybe in between, or can you point me toward that so I could re-review that maybe? Because that would be something that maybe could be informative. Because I'm kind of thinking of when the resident came a couple meetings ago and kind of probed us to think through what we want that to look like in the future in terms of cars and biking, and that is something that I've been sort of marinating on. So it'd be good to sort of see what the vision is there, and then we can think about how to sort of improve some of that or implement some.
Yes, that's a great point. And actually, those are some of the things that I was going to suggest we beef up the improving bike lanes and initiative encourage bicycling. Because so there is that booklet, right? And that has a lot of information on Brisbane bike routes. But also, and there's other big developments that are coming in and how bicycling is fitting into that. Another thing is when they do pave some roads, that presents an opportunity to probably put some, bicycling signage. But we also should probably study as a whole, similar to what it was done to the kid safe route, maybe a bike route. But definitely, there's a lot of room to look at the bicycles in Brisbane.
We are expecting pavement and new markings on Old County Road as soon as that moves forward. Both sides will be designated as sharrows. And recently driving through South San Francisco on the Hillside Boulevard part, it's amazing how beautiful it looks with the, designated bike lanes and all the
Yes.
markings. And I can't wait to see it here.
Yes, yes.
So are we going to wind this up?
Was that?
Are we going to wind this up soon?
Yes. So so one more comment or another point. Maybe look at the trailer park in Bayshore to see how it can help out those that community in terms of their parking, and also the manager from that park, she had a conversation with me, and some of the things that she mentioned was when there is a accident, or just because Bayshore is almost like a main road, there's a lot of debris that makes itself to the trailer park. So how is that damaged? How can it? How is that managed? How can it be improved? And then they have the parking that is parallel to the road. So just to see if there's an opportunity to explore more ideas to improve that community.
You can add that to the list.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Request real quick.
sure.
Can we refer to the trailer park as the mobile home park?
Sure.
Out of respect for the residents?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so that was my 2 points there. I'm not sure if we got to rank all of them, and do you feel good with the conversation we had to add it to the agenda? To the work plan?
Yep.
Okay, so let's keep moving on the agenda. Staff updates.
So in keeping with the theme of restriping and making improvements for bicyclists, as you guys, I'm sure have realized, Visitation's being repaved, and right now we're doing it in segments, and we do the upper portion first, but we're going to be including bike sharrows in both directions of traffic in between Mendocino and Klamath. So before you essentially get into the uphill residential, where we really didn't feel bicyclists would be using it that often. And then there will also be, once the lower visitation overlay begins, there will be additional sharrows down the way to San Francisco Avenue. So bike sharrows from Klamath to San Francisco Avenue in due time on visitation. And that was, and also thanks to Christian, I know he spoke with Karen about that a little bit. And I believe a member of the public offered input on that one. So that's one improvement on visitation. And then that's the good news. And then, well, it's not bad news, but the lower visitation overlay is being delayed a little bit because of weather and because of temperature, shorter days, a lot of conflicts that make it quite difficult for the contractor to do this in a timely fashion. And at their suggestion, it's probably being delayed till early next year, the lower part. But the upper visitation is on schedule, and restriping is going to occur on Monday, and then the upper part will be finished. As you guys have mentioned, the speed signs are up, and yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys put those speed signs on Bayshore, and I think that was very welcome, and kudos to you guys for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so is that it for staff updates?
Yeah.
Okay, ladies. Chair and committee members matters. Any updates here?
Happy holidays.
Yes, happy
Happy
holidays
holidays,
to all you
yes.
guys, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. If I don't see you. Our next meeting is going to be January the 3rd. And with that, we adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.